My parents did nothing to help me as my vision deteriorated. Upon obtaining assistance, I revealed a secret that had almost brought our family to ruin. Even though I'm only 17, I've recently been having some really bad vision issues. It all began approximately 8 months ago when I began to notice blurry vision. It kept getting worse, so I initially assumed it was just from staring at screens too much for school. I mentioned that I was having problems seeing the board in class to my parents, Sarah, 42, and Mark, 45. I was just told to take a seat nearer the front. Although we've always been below middle class, things really tightened up after my dad's factory closed about 2 years ago. His 20-year employment was lost, and it had a severe emotional and financial impact on him. He used to be this self-assured, gregarious guy who rarely left the house. In order to make ends meet, my mom had to take on extra shifts at the diner where she works as a waitress. I made an effort to lessen their anxiety. I stopped requesting to go out with friends or buy new clothes. The thought of joining the school's art club was abandoned entirely due to the exorbitant cost of the supplies. That being said, I can't ignore this vision thing. My vision worsened over the course of the following weeks. I developed a constant headache from squinting. It became really difficult to read. On the page, the words would blend together. When I brought it up to my parents once more, they simply told me that I was making things up and that I should use my phone less. My mother and I have always been close. We used to have these special girls' nights when I was little, where we would bake cookies and watch old movies. But lately, she's been so exhausted and anxious that our conversation hardly ever ventured beyond how school was going. Did you complete your homework too? Even though I know she's trying her hardest to support our family, I miss those times we spent together. When I stumbled at school last month while descending the stairs due to poor vision, things reached a breaking point. I had to go to the nurse's office because I had a pretty bad ankle twist. When I said I couldn't see the steps well, Mrs. Johnson, the school nurse, asked me a series of questions about how I'd fallen. With a worried expression, she performed a brief vision test. She advised me to make an appointment with an ophthalmologist right away. That day, my ankle was bandaged when I got home, and I pleaded with my parents to take me to the eye doctor. They declined, stating that I simply needed to exercise more caution and that we couldn't afford it at this time. My dad, who is legally blind, muttered something about me being clumsy like your Aunt Linda. That remark has stayed with me. Did my family have a history of vision issues that I was unaware of? They won't listen to me when I try to explain how bad things have gotten. Now, I can hardly distinguish faces from across the room. I can't watch TV unless I'm seated directly in front of the monitor, and let's not even talk about attempting to use the computer to read my textbooks or complete my homework. My friendships are also being impacted by this whole thing. I've been finding reasons not to go to the movies or hang out at the mall when my 17-year-old best friend Allison keeps inviting me. How am I supposed to explain that I am unable to see the movie screen or read the price tags? I worry that if she finds out how bad my eyes have gotten, she'll think I'm weird or lose interest in being friends. I've had a thing on this 17-year-old guy named Ryan in my English class for a very long time. He waved and smiled at me in the hallway last week, but I couldn't see him well enough to be positive it was him. Since I didn't wave back, I believe he now believes I was purposefully ignoring him. It's just another method. My life is being messed up by this visual issue. We are on a tight budget, as I know. As previously mentioned, my dad was laid off last year and has only been able to find part-time work at the grocery store stocking shelves. Compared to his previous management role, this is a significant step down, and I can tell it's killing his self-esteem. At night, my mother cleans offices, and during the day, she works at a diner. She is constantly worn out. It pains me to watch them suffer in this way, but it seems like more than just financial hardship. It's a case of neglect. Both my schooling and health are deteriorating. I can't carry on in this manner. I was a huge reader once. I used to lose hours reading and traveling to different worlds. Reading is now a torturous chore that gives me a splitting headache. I considered looking for a job to help pay for my own eye exam, but I'm not sure if anyone would hire me with my terrible vision. Besides, I already find it difficult to keep up with my coursework. My academic performance has been declining, and if this continues, I'm concerned about failing my classes. I was on the honor roll once, but these days I'm barely making it by with C's. Allison offered to ask her parents for assistance, but the whole thing makes me feel ashamed. Her family has a good income. Her mother is a doctor, and her father practices law. They reside in a lovely area of town in this large home. My problems are not something I want to burden other people with. To be completely honest, I'm afraid of my parents' reaction if they discovered that I was seeking assistance from others. They're proud individuals, and I believe they would feel ashamed if they knew that I was disclosing our financial difficulties to others. Though I'm concerned they might contact CPS or something, I think about speaking with a school counselor. My goal is to avoid causing my parents any trouble. They're just having financial difficulties. They're not nasty people. However, I'm also in desperate need of assistance. This cannot continue. A small part of me questions whether I'm overreacting to the whole thing. Tommy, my 12-year-old brother, seems to think so. He calls me Mole Girl and asks me to count his fingers from across the room, all in jest. I'm aware that he doesn't mean to be harsh. It hurts even though he's a child and doesn't realize how serious this is. I long for our family's former dynamic. Every Friday night, we would gather around the kitchen table to play games like Scrabble or Monopoly. These days, nobody has the energy or calmness for that kind of thing. Dad looks at job listings on his laptop most evenings. Tommy and I are often left on our own when Mom works late shifts. Is it unreasonable of me to continue bringing up this matter? Shall I just attempt to handle it by myself? I think I'm losing my mind over here. I would truly appreciate any guidance. I'm afraid of what might occur if I don't receive assistance right away, but I'm also afraid of making matters worse for my family. All I want is to be able to see properly once more. First update. A lot has happened in the roughly 3 weeks since my last post. I would like to thank everyone for their support and guidance first. It was a huge help in giving me the confidence to act. After going over every comment you've made, I made the decision to discuss the matter with my school nurse. Mrs. Johnson was really understanding, even though I was nervous. She said she had been concerned about me and that she remembered me from when I had twisted my ankle. She performed a basic vision screening and determined that I had severe visual impairment. Mrs. Johnson gave my parents a call and let them know how serious the situation was. My parents were first upset with me for involving the school. I was accused of attempting to make them look bad, but Mrs. Johnson remained resolute, clarifying that this was more than a school issue. I was in danger for my general health. She gave them information about free clinics and resources for help that they could research. It took my mother a while to agree to take me to a free community health center. We had to wait for hours in a crowded waiting room. My mother's discomfort was evident to me. She was probably thinking about all the other things she should have been doing as she continued to fidget and check her watch, but she remained by my side the entire time. The ophthalmologist, the doctor, Dr. Patel, was astounded by how poor my vision had become. I was given the diagnosis of astigmatism, nearsightedness, and severe myopia by him. He said there might have been irreversible harm if it had been ignored for a longer period of time. I saw the exact moment my mother's face fell. In the exam room, she broke down in tears and repeatedly apologized for not bringing me in sooner. Dr. Patel was very compassionate. He explained my condition and our options in great detail. He even stayed late to assist us in submitting an application for a program that gives low-income families free glasses. They won't arrive for a few weeks, but it's so comforting to know that assistance is on its way. My mother was silent for a while on the way home. She then proceeded to tell me about Linda, the sister of my dad, whom I had previously mentioned in my post. Her parents reportedly experienced similar visual issues when she was younger, unable to pay for her appropriate care. By the time she finally got help as an adult, her vision was so bad that it couldn't be fully corrected. That's why she's legally blind now. Mom said that's part of why Dad was so resistant to getting my eyes checked. He was scared of finding out I had the same problem as his sister. I guess sometimes it's easier to pretend a problem doesn't exist and face it head on. It doesn't excuse their behavior, but it helps me understand it a little better. Things are tense at home, though. My parents are embarrassed and angry that outsiders got involved in our business. They've been giving me the cold shoulder, barely speaking to me except when necessary. I know they're struggling with their pride, but it hurts to be treated like this when all I did was try to take care of my health. Tommy's been nicer to me, at least. He overheard Mom telling Dad about my diagnosis, and I think it scared him a little. He stuck with a mole girl, teasing, and has actually been trying to help me out. Yesterday, he offered to read aloud from my history textbook when he saw me struggling with it. It was a small thing, but it meant a lot. My older brother, Jake, 20, came home from college for a weekend and was furious when he found out what had been going on. Jake and I have always been close. He's been like a second parent to me and Tommy ever since things got tough for our family. He got into a huge fight with our parents, calling them out for neglecting my needs. It got pretty ugly. There was a lot of yelling and some things were said that can't be easily taken back. Jake brought up other instances where he felt our parents had dropped the ball, like the time Tommy had a really high fever, but they waited too long to take him to the doctor, or how they never seemed to have money for our school supplies. The dad always has cash for his weekly poker game with his buddies. Dad got defensive and started yelling about how Jake doesn't understand what it's like to try to support a family, how he's just a know-it-all college kid who has no idea about the real world. Mom was crying, begging them both to stop. I took Tommy to my room, and we just sat there listening to the shouting match downstairs. Jake left early, slamming the door on his way out. I'm grateful that my vision is finally being addressed, but now I'm worried about the fallout this has caused in my family. The atmosphere at home is so uncomfortable. Dad's been staying out late every night, probably to avoid dealing with us. Mom seems lost in her own world, going through the motions but not really present. I'm counting down the days until my glasses arrive, hoping things might calm down once this is all resolved. In the meantime, I'm trying to focus on the positives. Allison has been great through all of this. She's been coming over to help me with homework and just to hang out. And Ryan from English class actually asked me if I was okay the other day. He said he noticed I've been squinting a lot in class. It was nice to know someone had noticed and cared. I'll keep you updated on how things go when I finally get my glasses, and if the situation at home improves at all. Right now, I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and there have been some significant developments. My glasses finally arrived, and it's been life-changing. Being able to see clearly again is amazing. I had almost forgotten what the world looked like in sharp focus. The first day I wore them to school, I was overwhelmed by all the details I've been missing. I could read posters on the walls, see leaves on trees outside the window, even make out individual blades of grass on the football field. My grades have begun to rise already. I can actually see the board in class and read my textbooks now. I no longer get headaches, and I no longer feel exhausted all the time from strained eyes. What a relief that is. Last week, Miss Reeves, my English teacher, pulled me aside after class to express her admiration for the progress I had made in my work. She even mentioned that the following semester, I might want to join the school's creative writing club. Unfortunately, there hasn't been much of an improvement at home. My parents continue to be aloof and bitter. They snidely remark that I must think I'm so smart now that I wear glasses, or that my little vision issue has turned the entire family upside down. I'm trying not to let it bother me even though it hurts. Jake now calls nearly every day to see how I'm doing. He's been a tremendous help, constantly reassuring me that seeking assistance was the right thing to do. If things at home get too bad, he's even offered to let me come stay with him while he attends college for a while. Although I'm grateful for the offer, I can't let Tommy handle this on his own. The real detonation occurred last week. I heard my parents fighting in their bedroom when I was up late studying for a biology test. I initially made an effort to ignore it. Their recent fights have been frequent. However, as soon as I heard my name, I had to pay attention. It turns out there was more to their resistance to having my eyes examined than just money. My dad seems to have been concealing a gambling addiction for a long time. His hidden debts were a major source of our financial difficulties. Despite being aware of it, my mother had been providing support to him, trusting that he would manage it. This realization shocked and infuriated me. I had vision problems all the time, and it wasn't just that we were poor. My dad was also gambling away money that we really needed. I tried to process this information by tossing and turning all night long. I confronted them at breakfast the next morning. It was just the three of us because Tommy was still asleep. I informed them that I had heard their chat and made a demand to find out the truth. It became a massive blow-up. At first, Dad made an effort to deny it, but in the end, Mom gave in and told everything. She explained to me how it all began. Tiny, a few occasional wagers on football games, but over time, the amount increased. Dad would swear he would not. A few weeks later, she would discover large cash withdrawals from their account, or discover betting slips concealed in his work bag. I questioned why, having lost our dancing job, she had never explained to us why she thought we were having difficulties. She claimed she could handle it on her own and that she was attempting to protect us. If the truth was discovered, she feared what would happen to our family. Dad became defensive, claiming that all he was attempting to do was succeed so that he could properly care for us. He got to talking about odds and systems and how he was overdue for a victory. He obviously didn't realize how ridiculous he sounded. He erupted when I brought this up, screaming that I had no right to judge him and that I was just a child with no concept of adult issues. Tommy came downstairs after the argument became so heated. Observing him standing there, terrified and bewildered in his pajamas, caused us to all halt abruptly. Dad slammed the door behind him and stormed out. He's been away from home for days. My mother is disorganized, taking turns apologizing to me and justifying Dad's behavior. She is constantly pleading with me not to tell Jake or anyone else in the family. She fears that if he finds out, he will sever all contact with his father. I'm not sure what to do right now. A part of me wants to give Jake a call and spill the beans. He is entitled to the truth about the circumstances facing our family. However, there's also a part of me that fears that if I do, I'll ruin our family entirely. I also worry about Tommy's possible reaction to this. He looks up to his father, and it could be very harmful for him to find out about the gambling. I'm currently concentrating on making up lost time at school and taking advantage of my improved vision. But I'm really struggling with this family secret. At home, I feel like I'm always treading carefully because I don't want to say the wrong thing and start a fight. After I make a decision regarding this entire mess, I'll provide another update. I simply feel disoriented and overburdened right now. Update 3. A lot has changed in the 2 months since my last update. My mother broke down in tears over unpaid bills after giving it some thought and having a particularly rough night. I chose to inform Jake about my father's gambling addiction. I felt he should be aware of the true state of affairs in our family and that I couldn't continue to keep that a secret. It wasn't at me that infuriated Jake. After driving straight home from college and unexpectedly showing up at our door, he caused a tense weekend full of heated arguments and difficult talks. Jake confronted his father, who initially attempted to minimize the circumstances. However, with all of us remaining steadfast, Dad eventually lost it and puked up the entirety of his gambling addiction. Although difficult to hear, I believe it was necessary. My dad had to acknowledge his need for assistance after the confrontation. He now makes it to 2 weekly meetings of Gamblers Anonymous. Though it's early, he appears dedicated to making a change. He's even begun to talk about the stress and guilt he's carried around for so long. It's strange to see my dad in this state of vulnerability, but it's also comforting to know that he's only human and is capable of making mistakes. My mother has begun attending Al-Anon gatherings for addicts' families. She's gradually revealing more about how difficult it has been to control her father's addiction while keeping it a secret from us kids. We had our first genuine heart-to-heart conversation in a long time last week. Even though we ended up crying together, it felt like a positive step in our relationship's recovery. Jake made the decision to leave college for a semester in order to assist at home. In addition to taking care of Tommy while our parents are at their meetings, he has been tremendous in helping Mom clean up the financial mess. He claims that his family comes first, but I know it must be difficult for him to put his life on hold in this way. As for me, ever since I can see, I'm doing a lot better in school. I've had excellent help from my teachers making up for what I missed. Even though reading was such a struggle for me before, I never would have thought to join the school newspaper. And who's that guy from my English class, Ryan? We've become more social. Throughout all of this family turmoil, he has been incredibly supportive. Having a conversation partner who isn't directly affected by the issue is helpful. Tom has been finding it difficult to adjust to all the changes. He doesn't understand why his father disappears so much. We chose not to reveal the whole truth to him just yet, only that Dad is receiving assistance for some adult issues. I've made an effort to be with him more often, offering to help with his schoolwork and to simply be there to chat when he needs to. Nothing is flawless. Our family still needs to work through a lot of conflict and trust issues. Both good and bad days come for Dad. He occasionally loses his temper with us because he's frustrated with the process, but he always apologizes afterwards. Although Mom still appears anxious most of the time, she is beginning to smile more frequently. I am feeling optimistic about the future for the first time in a very long time. At last, instead of taking their problems out on my brothers and me, my parents are addressing their problems. Even though it's not always simple, our family is learning how to communicate better. I want to express my gratitude to everyone for their suggestions and encouragement along this journey. You gave me the confidence to advocate for myself and obtain the support I required. Even though I know there are still obstacles to overcome, I feel more prepared than ever to do so. After this, I'm not sure how frequently I'll be updating. Though our family still has a long way to go, it feels like we're headed in the right direction at last. I'll make sure to update everyone if something significant occurs. I'm trying to take each day as it comes and concentrate on the good things in my life, like my better vision, my academic work, and the fact that my family is finally receiving the assistance we require.